Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to give you a presentation on winter analysis for the winter season of 2024 to 2025. So yeah, let's get right into it. So starting off with our current ENSO values, we're going to talk about La Nina, ENSO neutral, PDO, QBO, polar vortex, and more. So yeah, so starting out with the current values. So I got this off of Tropical Tidbits, a great site with lots of models, not just on winter, but tropical systems, U.S. forecasts, temperatures, precipitation, etc. But anyways, talking about the Nino 3.4 index, sorry about that. Our latest value you can see is right here, negative 1.039. So right around negative 1.0. And that is a borderline, I'd say, moderate La Nina. So what that tells me is, and you can see the previous graph. So it's been a steady decline into La Nina territory. This is kind of what we're expecting. However, as we get into October, November, it's going to start moderating off and eventually kind of climb back up. So right now we're at right around negative 1.0. That's kind of on the border of a moderate La Nina. It's going to rise back into a weak La Nina, and depending on how fast it rises, we could see a cool ENSO neutral by the time winter is here, or it would be a weak La Nina. It is going to continue dropping off. Okay, you're going to have these little ups and down blimps, but it's going to continue dropping off, I'd say, until mid-October before it really starts coming back up. Actually, I'd say till maybe early mid-October, yeah, and then it'll really start moderating back up. But that's your current ENSO values. Talking about model predictions, now this is kind of what we're expecting. So let's use September, October, November. The average had it. So actually, yeah, people aren't really talking about this, but model predictions had it at between. So the dynamical had it between 0.5 and 1, and then the statistical had it between 0 and 0.5 below. Now that's interesting, okay, because we are right now at 1 below. Okay, and so that's already telling me that we're actually kind of ahead of schedule. We were actually lacking behind, and now we're ahead of schedule. And so this could just be me, but I mean these models don't even get down to negative 1.0 for model prediction at the ENSO. Now this is for the 3.4, and with the other one, we on the current observations we have a negative 1.0 Celsius. Okay, 1 Celsius cooler. So that's interesting, something we're gonna have to watch out for. But as you can see, it kind of keeps dropping off until November, and then December we'll have to see how much it rises back between we get to the main winter months of January and February. So January, February, March, dynamical between 0.5 and 1. That's kind of like a weak La Nina, and then between 0 and 0.5 is about a cool ENSO. Cool ENSO is the most favorable for snow lovers that are out there in the east, while dynamical, this would be less favorable. So we'll have to watch. We'll have to see what happens with those negative 1.0. We do have a couple models here, and they do show it kind of peaking out right around negative 1.03 before rising back up and getting into weak territory. But we could actually dip into moderate and then head back up into weak by winter. Now talking about the polar vortex. Now there's been a lot of hype surrounding how it's been weaker than average. This red line represents our average. This blue thick line that might be a little hard to see is our current forecast and current analysis. And I've learned this too. I also was like, wait, we have a very weak polar vortex. But something I've learned is that, yes, we're starting out weak, for sure. Okay, and we're going to stay weaker than average all the way until October 20th. That's where we're going to start intertwining and going stronger than average, believe it or not, getting into late October. And so that tells me it doesn't really matter what we are right now. I mean, maybe a little bit, but we're not really going to feel the effects of the polar vortex until the real winter months. When I'm talking December, January, February. Right now, it doesn't really have an impact. And so this weaker polar vortex not really causing any effects, and the hype behind it is all fake. Once we really get into November, which is kind of when we can really start paying attention to it, we're going to be stronger than average, okay, in the latest forecast. And so that tells you that, hey, what's happening right now doesn't depict the future that we're gonna stay weak. Okay, we're gonna stay weak until late October, so probably around a month longer before we rise up and get back above average going into November. So it's something to keep in mind that right now, yes, we have a weak polar vortex, but that doesn't mean we're gonna have a weaker polar vortex for the rest of winter. Just in case you guys were wondering, a weaker polar vortex tends to bring more cold shots and snow for the lower 48 rather than a strong polar vortex which bottles up all that colder air in Siberia. Now moving on, QBO. Right now it's in the westerly phase. Now a QBO in the westerly phase is favorable for snowfall in the eastern two-thirds. However, the westerly phase is over here in the black, and then the easterly phase is over here in the hot pink. Right now we're in the westerly phase, but we're quickly transitioning to an easterly phase by October, November, and eventually we're going to stay into an easterly phase, which is unfavorable for snow in the east. Um, we're going to stay in the easterly phase throughout winter before you start to see us kind of creeping back towards that westerly phase, most likely after winter. So that's something we have to keep in mind as well, like quasi-biennial oscillation. The Pacific Decadal Oscillation, or the PDO, is currently, sorry, it's a little blurry, but blue is negative, red is positive, okay? We are right now in the negative, okay? And what that means is, again, less favorable for snow and cold in the eastern two-thirds. Negative PDO is a warm pool of water off the coast of Japan, and so that's causing our patterns for what we're expecting this winter to be less favorable for snow, solely based off the PDO. And it's been negative, okay? It's been negative for these past few winters, and these past few winters we've been below average for much of the eastern US, okay? So that also kind of gives some reflection and insight. Doesn't mean this winter will be below average, but it's something to keep in mind that we will have a negative PDO once again. So, given all this talk, our final notes: an easterly phased QBO and a negative PDO would equal milder winters for the east and cooler winters for the west, okay? Those two blends go perfectly for milder winters in the east and cooler winters for the west. A weak La Nina and cool ENSO, however, is a cooler and snowier winter for the northern half and even the eastern half of the US. And so that's kind of battles that main first point. Now, the base point. This is still very far out, of course. However, an interesting winter may set up for many. A mixed bag winter could set in for many in the eastern two-thirds of the U.S. So, I expect that, okay? Given we have so many teleconnections, so many phases, sub-phases going with each other, phases going against each other, it's going to be an interesting winter, and we're not going to be able to figure out everything until we get much, much closer. So, given that, the last little dash is that there's going to be much more to be looked at for this winter, and I'll give an even more in-depth analysis video coming in the coming months, probably in November or so. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next video, and yeah, have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.